is your no bullshit guide to a happier life. Quick, but not necessarily easy tips to help you to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your business and your life. My name is Helen Calvert. I'm a coach, a business owner and a parent, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I do swear occasionally, as the title suggests, so pop in your headphones if I'm not safe for little ears. Ready to go? Let's do this. Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and stuck in life's endless hamster wheel? Imagine a space where you receive expert guidance exactly when you need it, belong to a supportive community that respects your comfort zone, engage actively or quietly observe, discover simple, actionable strategies to create meaningful change, and have a blueprint for reclaiming happiness on your terms. The Happier Life Hub helps you banish the bullshit and live your happiest life. Join us today for just £20 per month by visiting happier-life.co.uk/hub. My hope is that this becomes your default place to turn when you're struggling or just need fresh ideas, like having me in your pocket whenever you need a boost. The world isn't built with your well-being in mind. Daily, we're bombarded with messages designed to keep us small, exhausted, and disconnected from our true selves. The Happier Life Hub is your gentle revolution against mediocrity, a warm, supportive resource centre to help you understand who you truly are and how you naturally thrive, create a life that genuinely supports your well-being, break free from societal expectations that drain your energy, and find fulfillment individually and collectively foster harmonious living. Do you wish for a single place where wisdom is easy to find and access, expert guidance without the commitment or expense of one-to-one coaching, and a space that boosts your confidence, enhances your emotional safety, and fosters belonging? I've got you covered. The Happier Life Hub is open and ready to welcome you. Join us today for just £20 per month by visiting happier-life.co.uk/hub or visit the show notes for this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode where we're going to be talking about types of neurodivergence. Now, this is outside of my comfort zone because this involves actual factual information rather than just my blathering opinions. But fortunately, I have some excellent material to refer to. So when people talk about neurodivergence, if they say that they are doing something that is ND friendly, or they love neurodivergent people, or they are neurodivergent, most often they are referring to autistic and ADHD people. And of course, we can be both. We can be ADHD, autistic and ADHD. Or even quite often, they're actually only referring to ADHD. I think that's the one that most gets referred to as neurodivergence, when actually it's just one type. The truth is, there are all kinds of neurodivergences, which I find fascinating. And I have a copy of Leanne Maskell's amazing, relatively new book called Blooming Differently, which is all about her experience of being ADHD. I will link to it in the show notes. And I am referring to that fantastic book here when I talk about some other neurodivergences. Leanne refers to learning differences, attention differences, and processing styles. I'm not going to go into all of them here. Apart from anything else, I'm not going to give away a ton of Leanne's book because you should go out and buy it. It is amazing. But I am going to refer to just a few of them. So with learning differences, we have hyperlexia and dyslexia. Now, dyslexia is a form of neurodivergence. It's probably a well-known experience or condition, but you may not realise it's part of the ND world, if you like. Hyperlexia is associated with advanced reading and writing abilities. And dyslexia is a condition actually relating to vision, which I found fascinating. So the visual system struggles to process the fine details of words or track words on a page into sentences and paragraphs, which is, I just find that fascinating, and that could be a whole discussion in and of itself. There's also dysgraphia, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, related to challenges with turning thoughts into written language, or being able to do that in a way that is age appropriate, which again, when I read that, that was very interesting. And I sent that straight away to a friend of mine whose son, I suspect, has that and has struggled with it for some time. There's dyspraxia, also known as developmental coordination disorder, which is a sensor motor issue causing challenges with sensing where the body is in space and controlling movements, especially fine motor movements. There's dyscalculia. I may have pronounced that incorrectly. It's a specific and persistent difficulty in understanding number-based information. Now, of course, there's nothing to say that if you have one of these things, you can't have the others. So you may feel like some of that resonates. It may well, and I have no information on this, folks, but I suspect that if you have one type of neurodivergence, you're probably more likely to have another. That's just the learning differences. Then we've got attention differences, interest-based nervous system, monotropism, processing styles. We've got bottom-up thinking, problem solving, sensory processing. There's so much. There is so much that comes under the heading of neurodivergence, and it's really interesting. And I hope that all the different types start to get more attention. You know, this season of my podcast is about my experience of being autistic, but there is so much more to neurodivergence than just autism or ADHD. We have a mindset block alert for this episode, and I feel like it's a mindset block that the whole world is trying to experience at the moment. Isn't all of this just made up rubbish? Well, isn't it interesting? The new culture wars, I saw this post on Instagram the other day, that the new culture wars are about neurodivergence, because the press has started to really hammer neurodivergent people and try to persuade the public that it's all a load of rubbish. Now, of course, we know that the NHS cannot cope financially with the amount of people who now need ND support. And they now need it because we now know more about it, not because we've all suddenly got it. Everyone's had it as much as they have it now forever. The NHS cannot cope with the influx, but rather than say that, we have a situation where the government has given its buddies in the press a little nudge and said, could you just make out this is all a load of rubbish and then we won't have to spend money on it? I'm not going to get into political discussion right now, but no, it is not all a load of rubbish. These are differences in people's brains that are real, and we know so much more about it now, which is wonderful. It means people can start to get help and support, and even if they don't need help and support, they can start to understand themselves, which to me is just the basis of a happier life. The more we understand about ourselves, the happier we can be. So we need to know these things so that we know what to look out for. You might want a diagnosis, you might want medical support, you might want practical support, you might want professional support, or you might just think, that sounds a bit like me. Don't really feel the need to get that looked into, but I'm certainly going to Google what helps people with dyspraxia, dyslexia, dysgraphia. You know, once you know what something is, you can find the information. There's a million tips and tricks out there for people with all of these different conditions and situations. Once we know that that's a thing that we experience, we can find the solutions. Now, of course, this brings me to that wonderful phrase we hear all the time, well, we're all a bit on the spectrum, innit? No, we're not all a bit on the spectrum for two reasons. Firstly, just because you have traits of certain types of neurodivergence does not mean you have enough of those traits to have a diagnosable condition. So many people may have many traits. That does not mean they have a condition. There are specific diagnostic criteria. And also, when people say it's a spectrum, they don't mean it goes from Bob over there, who's completely neurotypical, to Jeff over there, who's ADHD as fuck. That's not the spectrum they mean. What they mean is that once you have one of these conditions, there is a spectrum of ways you experience it. So I experience a lot of social communication difficulties. I don't experience so many sensory difficulties. I have some, but not loads. That's my place on the spectrum. So it's only a spectrum once you actually have one of these conditions. So no, we're not all a bit on the spectrum. Please stop saying that. It drives us insane. So rather than it all being a load of made up nonsense, because surely everyone has a bit of this and we're all just human and we're all just different and that's okay. I'm not a fan of that approach. I am a fan of the approach that one day, hopefully, the world will be accepting of everyone and everyone's needs, and we will start conversations with what do you need and what makes you comfortable, and therefore maybe we won't need so many labels and diagnoses because everyone will just look after each other the way we need to be looked after. But that's not where we are right now. So we need to know who everybody is. But rather than thinking, oh my God, there's so much of it around, it can't be real in a way, which seems to be one of the approaches. To me, it's a real signal as to why so many educational establishments and so many workplaces are not working for people. If we have this vast array of differences and different conditions, it's no wonder that when we're all expected to fit into a certain type of box that doesn't even suit all neurotypical people, it might suit a certain gender, a certain age, a certain race. I mean, it's a pretty small box, the box that people sit in if the workplace and school actually really suits them. But surely it's an indication that things have to change, because we have immensely talented people all over the world who just are not comfortable fitting into these tiny boxes that certain institutions expect of them. And it's a ridiculous waste of talent. So it brings us to that bit, doesn't it? That is another stock phrase of, well, this is all very interesting, but we didn't have it in my day. And if we didn't have it in my day, it must be the fault of too many E numbers in Ribena and too many video games. It's not. Yes, the world has changed, but the world has always been changing. People in the 1950s would have been harking back to the 1920s. People in the 1920s would have been harking back to the 1880s. Everybody always thinks things were better when they were kids. They weren't. People have always been people. No, we may not have had an understanding of all these conditions years and years ago. What did we have instead? We had alcoholism. We had domestic violence. We had people being shut up in mental institutions. We had tragic, horrific experiences because we didn't know enough about all kinds of conditions, not just neurodivergent ones. We also had a world where things went on behind closed doors. So you may not have seen it, but there were people living bloody awful lives, desperately unhappy, desperately trying to self-medicate and cope in whatever way they could. And that is not the world we want to live in anymore. There is an expectation these days of emotional competence. It is no longer acceptable to knock your wife around a bit because life's a bit stressful. We don't do that anymore. It is no longer acceptable to be a functional alcoholic. These are not things that we now just say, oh, well, that's just, that's just Sue, that's just Gemma, that's just how she is, that's just how he is, that's just how they behave. That's understandable. We expect so much emotional competence these days, and rightly so. And if we expect that, then we have to fully understand ourselves and understand the reasons why we get triggered and we get stressed and we get overwhelmed. And a lot of these things are rooted in neurodivergence. So if we want an emotionally competent world, then we need to understand and support all the people in it. And that means fully understanding the wide range of conditions and just experiences that people have. So it's a little bit of education for me apart from anything else, because I had no idea there were so many different things that come under the umbrella of neurodivergence. And I think it's important. I myself have told people that my events are neurodivergent friendly. What I mean is they're pretty accessible to people with ADHD and autism. I have no idea if they're accessible to people with dyslexia. I suspect they're not. So it's something that we all need to think more about when we're talking about being ND and supporting people who are ND. Are we really talking about all the conditions? Or are we talking about just one or two, which is fine. We just need to be clear about that. So I hope this has been interesting. I hope it has encouraged you to go and have a look at some of the things you might be experiencing and, crucially, what can help you with them. Because if we look after ourselves and find solutions for ourselves and are excessively kind to ourselves, guess what? We can squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of life. Speak to you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out how to work with me or how to get your hands on a copy of my book, you can find all of those links in the info for this episode. My huge thanks to Stephanie Ward of the Spicy Brain Collective for sponsoring the whole of this season of the No Bullshit Guide to a Happier Life. You can also find out more about Steph's collective for neurodivergent business owners via the links in the episode info. See you next time.